And just when I thought that everything was peachy keen, somewhere deep within the shadows there were other things to be seen. An untamable beast with the urge to feast, and only alone would he stand. The culprit of fear on the 67th tier, there lies the boogeyman.
No introduction needed, 9 times you must repeat it. Mind trying to just delete it. I'm nines blessed to be this rough MC. His gluttony would rhyme, grind, trust, believe it. A legend ever since the projects. An odd tech would get respect when he wrecked the set, but never get the props that was God blessed. So this is me never letting the God rest. The object of rawness, dejected steps to darkness. Led to the industry, whispering the name. History became a mystery, cause listeners in the game wish to sing the same riff. Cerebral glitch will lead to lame, and this will be a gift from me that'll split and bleed your brain. They heard the name, but can't put a face with it, oh what a shame. When he reigns, in the woods he stands still. He turned the lanes, from saint to straight wicked. Don't tell me you ain't heard the saying, the boogeyman's real.
He's underneath your bed, trapped inside your head. You try to find it, but you decide it's just that boogeyman. We feel what we can't see. This web's a tangled weave of life designed to try and blind you from that boogeyman. And when that voice you hear eliminates your fears, what do? Discover the truth that it's the boogeyman. And now you know it's real, and everything you feel hits you again. You will stand face to face with that boogeyman.
They don't wanna have to try to do as I do. That's probably why it ain't been easy for me to slide through. I chew rappers up on stage and mics, they pride flew out with the Ravens flight to hate and haven lies you. Cause you don't want change, and you don't want strange. Rearranging the main lanes to bring games from plain Jane. That's when your fame strains, and you can't maintain. You think you sing such an insane range, same thing. And I'm the shadow in the dark that came for battle in the park, and they skedaddled when I parked. It gave a rattle to their hearts, cause they're afraid that they will all fail. Darkness will prevail, the boogeyman is not a tall tale.
What a tough act to follow. You afraid, tell me, are ya? When you just came, you were nada. Tell your lane, sayonara.
The boogeyman, the boogeyman.
Evil is stirring in Mordor. Ring has awoken. It's heard its master's call.
But he was destroyed. Your sister nor was.
No, Frodo. Spinoras was endured.
In the fires of Mount Doom, the Dark Lord asked in secret a master ring to control all others. And into this ring, one ring to rule them all.
servant of Morgoth. You are nameless. Faceless. Formless. Go back to the void from whence you came!
It was in this moment, when all hope had faded, that Isildur, son of the king, took up his father's sword. The enemy of the free peoples of Middle-earth, was defeated.
Your power lies in your ability to control your emotions. Once someone has command over your inner world, they become your master. Protect your reputation at all costs. When it is strong, your rivals will seldom challenge you. When it is weak, attacks will come from all corners. Stamp out the embers before they become a blaze. Do not make decisions when clouded by emotion. Wait for a clearing and then act. Be adaptable in your rule. The tides of change are unceasing and will slowly erode any rigid structures that stand against it. Be fluid or risk being turned to dust.
Now I wish to share with you some wise words from a time when America was still what we all remember it being told it was supposed to be. Some not even aware that this country is no longer the US we grew up reading about in school. Now this guy, I remember hearing about him, but I was still too young to have been involved in political affairs. Besides, I was dealing with a whole different set of problems, but even here you'll hear him talk about how America shifted from what it was into what it has become, and notice he is pointing towards the same problem we have today. Corrupt politics, but he gives us a little more detail.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you and good evening. The sponsor has been identified, but unlike most television programs, the performer hasn't been provided with a script. As a matter of fact, I have been permitted to choose my own words and discuss my own ideas regarding the choice that we face in the next few weeks. I have spent most of my life as a Democrat. I recently have seen fit to follow another course. I believe that the issues confronting us cross party lines. Now, one side in this campaign has been telling us that the issues of this election are the maintenance of peace and prosperity. The line has been used, we've never had it so good. But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a third of its national income. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share. And yet our government continues to spend $17 million a day more than the government takes in. We haven't balanced our budget 28 out of the last 34 years. We've raised our debt limit 3 times in the last 12 months. And now our national debt is 1.5 times bigger than all the combined debts of all the nations of the world. We have $15 billion in gold in our treasury. We don't own an ounce. Foreign dollar claims are $27.3 billion. And we've just had announced that the dollar of 1939 will now purchase 45 cents in its total value. As for the peace that we would preserve, I wonder who among us would like to approach the wife or mother whose husband or son has died in South Vietnam and ask them if they think this is a peace that should be maintained indefinitely. Do they mean peace, or do they mean we just want to be left in peace? There can be no real peace while one American is dying someplace in the world for the rest of us. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, 2 friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the president as our moral teacher and our leader. And he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those Founding Fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. Now, we have no better example of this than government's involvement in the farm economy over the last 30 years. Since 1955, the cost of this program has nearly doubled. 1/4 of farming in America is responsible for 85% of the farm surplus. 3/4 of farming is out on the free market and has known a 21% increase in the per capita consumption of all its produce. You see, that 1/4 of farming, that's regulated and controlled by the federal government. In the last 3 years, we've spent $43 in the feed grain program for every dollar bushel of corn we don't grow. Senator Humphrey last week charged that Barry Goldwater, as president, would seek to eliminate farmers. He should do his homework a little better, because he'll find out that we've had a decline of 5 million in the farm population under these government programs. He'll also find that the Democratic administration has sought to get from Congress extension of the farm program to include that 3/4 that is now free. He'll find that they've also asked for the right to imprison farmers who wouldn't keep books as prescribed by the federal government. The Secretary of Agriculture asked for the right to seize farms through condemnation and resell them to other individuals. And contained in that same program was a provision that would have allowed the federal government to remove 2 million farmers from the soil. At the same time, there's been an increase in the Department of Agriculture employees. There's now 1 for every 30 farms in the United States. And still, they can't tell us how 66 shiploads of grain headed for Austria disappeared without a trace, and Billy Solestis never left shore.
Long have you hunted me. Long have I eluded you. Behold the sword of Elendil.
What a, 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 what a,
time, not scared of the sunshine. Walk like Blade, never behave. My right mind has left the sky, is now plunged. The red sun, all of it's now done. Screaming that red rum, bodies make hobbies. Madman, I'm sorry, never planning on stopping. The vampires unlocking, levels on levels. Push on the pedal, but you can't escape. Drug of my choice is blood syrup, bitch, you my pancake. Awake the clutch, now we in gear. Leak from your ear, sleep from the rear. Peek through your shears, eyes cut appear. Terror's now here, put your guns up. Silver ain't the color, cause my red dot will cross ya. Foster your roster, groom 'em, it'll cost you 1, 2, or 3 bodies they may off ya. Back as my spring, cue the murder please. Ain't no kerosene, we don't burn, we clean. Puncture wounds, paint the scene.
I've been on adrenaline, so give me the night. Back in the coffin by the morning, not a fan of the light. I'm gonna paint this town red, leaving it fright. Went from your shit, let's do it here, just one bite. I've been on adrenaline, so give me the night. Back in the coffin by the morning, not a fan of the light. I'm gonna paint this town red, leaving it fright. Went from your shit, let's do it here, just one bite. Till the sun up and I evaporate. The night is young, come on and join the dead parade. Eternity forever, don't exaggerate.